Hello friends, I am Abhilasha Thackur. Today I come to you with a rather short book, but just like any other good book, it's impactful, motivating, and inspiring. And it also changed my point of view on things, and I hope it helps you live better lives too. The first chapter of this book was a bit shocking for me. When I first read this book, long time back, don't remember when. After I read the chapter, I thought on it and did just what the author had suggested and felt very uncomfortable. Uncomfortable to an extent that I felt my emotions choking me. I reached out to a dear friend and she helped me understand the deeper meaning of the practice, and when I thought on it harder and meditated on it, it helped me understand the baggage I was carrying unknowingly. It helped me understand what I was really capable of doing. It helped me understand the real values that my life had. It helped me understand the real and the unreal. This process helped me be more focused, and it felt so much more easier to put my 100% in the real sense of the task and the things that I was doing. I hope this book helps you in any way possible to make your life better and more joyous. I wish you find the motivation in life to do the great wonders you always wanted to achieve. I really wish this book helps you. Happy listening. Chapter 1. Get on your deathbed. A number of years ago, when I was working with psychotherapist Devers Brandon, she put me through her deathbed exercise. I was asked to clearly imagine myself lying on my own deathbed and to fully realize the feelings connected with dying and saying goodbye. Then she asked me to mentally invite the people in my life who were important to me to visit my bedside, one at a time. As I visualized each friend and relative coming in to visit me, I had to speak to them out loud. I had to say to them what I want them to know as I was dying. As I spoke to each person, I could feel my voice breaking. Somehow, I couldn't help breaking down. My eyes were filled with tears. I experienced such a sense of loss. It was not my own life I was mourning. It was the love I was losing. To be more exact, it was a communication of love that had never been there. During this difficult exercise, I really got to see how much I'd left out in my own life, how many wonderful feelings I had about my children, for example, that I'd never explicitly expressed. At the end of the exercise, I was an emotional mess. I had rarely cried that hard in my life. But when those emotions cleared, a wonderful thing happened. I was clear. I knew what was really important and who really mattered to me. I understood for the first time what George Patton meant when he said, "Death can be more exciting than life." From that day on, I vowed not to leave anything to chance. I made up my mind never to leave anything unsaid. I wanted to live as if I might die any moment. The entire experience altered the way I've related to people ever since. And the great point of the exercise wasn't lost on me. We don't have to wait until we're actually near death to receive these benefits of being mortal. We can create the experience anytime we want. A few years later, when my mother lay dying in a hospital in Thackur, I rushed to her side to hold her hand and repeat to her all the love and gratitude I felt for who she had been for me. When she finally died, my grieving was very intense, but very short. In a matter of days, I felt that everything great about my mother had entered into me and would live there as a loving spirit forever. A year and a half before my father's death, I began to send him letters and poems about his contribution to my life. He lived his last months and died in a grip of chronic illness. So communicating and getting through to him in person wasn't always easy, but I always felt good that he had those letters and poems to read. Once he called me after I'd sent him a Father's Day poem, and he said, "Hey, I guess I wasn't such a bad father at all." Poet William Blake warned us about keeping our thoughts locked up until we die. "When thought is closed in caves," he wrote, "then love will show its roots in deepest hell." Pretending you aren't going to die is detrimental to your own enjoyment of life. It is detrimental in the same way that it would be detrimental for a basketball player to pretend there was no end to the game he was playing. That player would reduce his intensity, adopt a lazy playing style, and of course, end up not having any fun at all. Without an end, there is no game. Without being conscious of death, you can't be fully aware of the gift of life. Yet, many of us, including myself, keep pretending that our life's game will have no end. We keep planning to do great things someday when we feel like it. We assign our goals and dreams to that imaginary island in the sea that Dennis Waitley calls Someday Island in his book Psychology of Winning. We find ourselves saying, "Someday I'll do this and someday I'll do that." Confronting our own death doesn't have to wait until we run out of life. In fact, being able to vividly imagine our last hours on our deathbed creates a paradoxical sensation, the feeling of being born all over again, the first step to fearless self-motivation. People living deeply, wrote poet and diarist Annis Nin, have no fear of death. And as Bob Dylan has sung, "He who is not busy being born is busy dying." Chapter 2. Stay Hungry. Arnold Schwarzenegger was not famous yet in 1976 when he and I had lunch together at the DoubleTree Inn in Tucson, Arizona. Not one person in the restaurant recognized him. He was in town publicizing the movie Stay Hungry, a box office disappointment he had just made with Jeff Briggs and Sally Field. I was a sports columnist for Tucson Citizen at that time, and my assignment was to spend a full day one-on-one with Arnold and write a feature story about him for our newspaper's Sunday magazine. I, too, had no idea who he was or who he was going to become. I agreed to spend the day with him because I had to. It was an assignment. And although I took to it with an uninspired attitude, it was one I'd never forget. Perhaps the most memorable part of the day with Schwarzenegger occurred when we took an hour for lunch. I had my reporter's notebook out and was asking questions for the story while we ate. At one point, I casually asked him, "Now that you have retired from bodybuilding, what are you going to do next?" With a voice as calm as he were telling me about some mundane travel plans, he said, "I'm going to be the #1 box office star in all of Hollywood." Mind you, that was not the slim, aerobic Arnold we know today. This man was pumped up and huge. And so, for my own physical sense of well-being, I tried to appear as though I found his goal reasonable. I tried not to show my shock and amusement at his plan. After all, his first attempt at movies didn't promise much, and his Australian accent and awkward, monstrous build didn't suggest instant acceptance by movie audiences. I finally managed to match his calm demeanor, and I asked him just how he planned to become Hollywood's top star. "It's the same process I used in bodybuilding," he explained. "What you do is create a vision of who you want to be, and then live into that picture as it were already true." It sounded ridiculously simple, too simple to mean anything, but I wrote it down, and I never forgot it. I'll never forget the moment when some entertainment TV show was saying that box office recipients from his second Terminator movie had made him the most popular box office draw in the world. Over the years, I used Arnold's idea of creating a vision as a motivational tool. I also elaborated on it in my corporate training seminars. I invited people to notice that Arnold said that you create a vision. He did not say that you wait until you receive a vision. You create one. In other words, you make it up. A major part of living a life of simple motivation is having something to wake up for in the morning, something that you are up to in life so that you will stay hungry. The vision can be created right now, better now than later. You can always change it if you want, but don't live a moment longer without one. Watch what being hungry to live that vision does to your ability to motivate yourself. Chapter 3. Tell yourself a true lie. I remember when my 12-year-old daughter, Marjorie, participated in a school poetry reading in which all her classmates had to write a lie poem about how great they were. They were supposed to make up untruths about themselves that made them sound unbelievably wonderful. I realized as I listened to the poems that the children were doing an unintended version of what Arnold did to clarify the picture of his future. By lying to themselves, they were creating a vision of who they wanted to be. It's noteworthy, too, that public schools are so out of touch with the motivational sources of individual achievement and personal success that in order to invite children to express big visions for themselves, they have to invite the children to lie. Most of us are unable to see the truth of who we could be. My daughter's school developed an unintended solution to that difficulty. If it's hard for you to imagine the potential in yourself, then you might want to begin by expressing it as a fantasy, as did the children who wrote the poems. Think up some stories about who you would like to be. Soon, you will begin to create the necessary blueprint for stretching your accomplishments. Without a picture of your highest self, you can't live into that self. Fake it till you make it. The lie will become the truth. Chapter 4. Keep your eyes on the prize. Most of us never really focus. We constantly feel a kind of irritating psychic chaos because we keep trying to think of too many things at once. There's always too much up there on the screen. There was an interesting motivational talk on this subject given by former Dallas Cowboys coach Jimmy Johnson to his football players during halftime at the 1993 Super Bowl. I told him that if I laid a 2x4 across the room, everybody would walk across it and not fall, because your focus would be that we were going to walk the 2x4. But if I put the same 2x4 10 stories high between two buildings, only a few would make it, because the focus would be on falling. Focus is everything. The team that is more focused today is the team that will win this game. Johnson told his team not to be distracted by the crowd, the media, or the possibility of losing, but to focus on each play of the game itself, just as it were a good practice session. The Cowboys won the game 52-17. There's a point to that story that goes way beyond football. Most of us tend to lose our focus in life because we're perpetually worried about so many negative possibilities. Rather than focusing on the 2x4, we worry about all the ramifications of falling. Rather than focusing on our goals, we are distracted by our worries and fears. But when you focus on what you want, it will come into your life. When you focus on being a happy and motivated person, this is who you will be. Chapter 5. Learn to sweat in peace. The harder you are on yourself, the easier life is on you. Or as they say in the Navy SEALs, the more you sweat in peacetime, the less you bleed in war. My childhood friend, Rhett Nichols, was the first to show me this principle in action. When we were playing Little League baseball, we were always troubled by how fast the pitchers threw the ball. We were in an especially good league, and the outgrown opposition pitchers, whose birth certificates we were always demanding to see, fired the ball at us at alarming speeds during the games. We began dreading going to the plate to hit. It wasn't fun. Batting had become something we just tried to get through without embarrassing ourselves too much. Then Rhett got an idea. What if the pitches we faced in games were slower than the ones we face every day in practice? Rhett asked. That's just the problem, I said. We don't know anybody who can pitch that fast to us. That's why in the games it's so hard. The ball looks like an aspirin coming in at 200 miles an hour. I know we don't know anyone who can throw a baseball that fast, said Rhett. But what if it wasn't a baseball? I don't know what you mean, I said. Just then, Rhett pulled from his pocket a little plastic golf ball with holes in it, the kind our dads used to hit in the backyard for golf practice. Get a bat, Rhett said. I picked up a baseball bat and we walked out in the park near Rhett's house. Rhett went to the pitcher's mound, but came in about 3 feet closer than usual. As I stood at the plate, he fired the little golf ball past me as I tried to swing it. Ha ha! Rhett shouted. That's faster than anybody you'll face in the Little League. Let's get going. We then took turns pitching to each other with this bizarre little ball humming in at incredible speeds. The little plastic ball was not only hilariously fast, but it curved and dropped more sharply than any Little Leaguer's pitch could do. By the time Rhett and I played our next league game, we were ready. The pitches looked like they were coming in slow motion. Big white balloons. I hit the first and only home run I ever hit after one of Rhett's sessions. It was off a left-hander whose pitch seemed to hang in the air forever before I creamed it. The lesson Rhett taught me was one I've never forgotten. Whenever I'm afraid of something coming up, I will find a way to do something that's even harder or scarier. Once I do the harder thing, the real thing becomes fun. The great boxer Muhammad Ali used this principle in choosing his sparring partners. He'd made sure that the sparring partners he worked with before a fight were better than the boxer he was going up against in the real fight. They might not always be better all around, but he found sparring partners who were each better in one certain way or another than his upcoming opponent. After facing them, he knew going into each fight that he had already fought those skills and won. You can always stage a bigger battle than the one you have to face. Watch what it does to your motivation going into the real challenge. Chapter 6. Simplify Your Life. The great Green Bay Packers football coach, Vince Lombardi, was once asked why his world championship team which had so many multi-talented players, ran such a simple set of plays. It's hard to be aggressive when you're confused, he said. One of the benefits of creatively planning your life is that it allows you to simplify. You can weed out, delegate, and eliminate all activities that don't contribute to your projected goals. Another effective way to simplify your life is to combine your tasks. Combining allows you to achieve 2 or more objectives at once. As I plan my day, I might notice that I need to shop for my family after work. That's a task I can't avoid before we are running out of everything. I also note that one of my goals is to finish reading my daughter Stephanie's book reports. I realize too that I have made a decision to spend more time doing things with all my kids, as I've tended lately to just coming home and crash at the end of a long day. An aggressive orientation to the day, making each day simpler and stronger than the day before, allows you to take a look at all of these tasks and small goals and ask yourself, what can I combine? Creativity is really little more than making unexpected combinations in music, architecture, anything, including your day. After some thought, I realize that I can combine shopping with doing something with my children. That looks obvious and easy, but I can't count the times I mindlessly go shopping or do things on my own just to get them done, and then run out of time to play with the kids. I also think a little further and remember that the grocery store where we shop has a little deli with tables in it. My kids love to make lists and go up and down the aisles themselves to fill the grocery cart. So I decide to read my daughter's book reports at the deli while they travel the aisles for food. They see where I'm sitting and keep coming over to update me on what they are choosing. After an hour or so, 3 things have happened at once. I've done something with the kids, I've read through the book reports, and the shopping has been completed. In her book, Brain Building in Just 12 Weeks, Marilyn Vos Savant recommends something similar to simplify life. She advises that we make a list of absolutely every small task that has to be done, say, over the weekend, and then do them all at once in an exciting, focused action, a maniac blitz. In other words, fuse all small tasks together and make the doing of them one task, so the rest of the weekend is absolutely free to create as you wish. Bob Cawthor, who was the president of Infincom, had the most simplified time management system I've ever seen in my life. His method was, do everything right on the spot. Don't put anything unnecessarily into your future. Do it now, so that the future is always wide open. Watching him in action was always an experience. I was sitting in his office, and I mentioned the name of a person whose company I wanted to take my training to in the future. Will you make a note to get in touch with him or let him know I'll be calling? I asked. Make a note? He asked in horror. The next thing I knew, before I could say anything, Bob was wheeling in his chair and dialing the person on the phone. Within 2 minutes, he'd schedule a meeting between the person and me, and after he put down the phone, he said, "Okay, done. What's next?" I told him I had prepared the report he wanted on training for his service teams, and I handed it to him. "You can read it later and get back to me," I offered. "Hold on a second," he said, already deeply absorbed in reading the report's content. After 10 minutes or so, during which time he read aloud much of what interested him, the report had been digested, discussed, and filed. It was a time management system like no other. What would you call it? Perhaps handle everything immediately? It kept Bob's life simple. He was an aggressive and successful CEO. And as Vince Lombardi said, it's hard to be aggressive when you're confused. Most people are reluctant to see themselves as being creative because they associate creativity with complexity. But creativity is simple. Michelangelo said that he could actually see his masterpiece, the David, in the huge, rough rock he discovered in a marble quarry. His only job, he said, was to carve away what wasn't necessary, and he would have his statue. Achieving simplicity in our cluttered and hectic lives is also an ongoing process of carving away what's unnecessary. The most dramatic experience of the power of simplicity occurred in 1984, when I was hired to help write the television and radio advertisements for Jim Colby, a candidate for United States Congress, running in Arizona's 5th District. In that campaign, I saw firsthand how focus, purpose, and simplicity can work together to create a great result. Based on prior political history, Colby had about a 3% chance of winning the election. His opponent was a popular incumbent congressman, during a time when incumbents were almost never defeated by challengers. In addition, Colby was a Republican in a largely Democratic district, and the final strike against him was that he had tried once before to defeat the same man, Jim McNulty, and had lost. The voters had already spoken on the issue. Colby himself supplied the campaigns with its sense of purpose. A tireless campaigner with an unwavering principle, he emanated his sense of mission, and we all drew energy from him. Political consultant Joan Shumate, one of the shrewdest people I've ever worked with, kept us all focused with a consistent campaign strategy. It was the job of the advertising and media to work and keep it strong and simple. Although our opponent ran nearly 15 different TV ads, each one about a different issue, we determined from the outset that we would stick to the same message throughout, from the first ad to the last. We basically ran the same ad over and over. We knew that although the district was largely Democratic, our polling showed that philosophically it was more conservative. Colby himself was a conservative, so his views coincided with the voters better than the opponents did, although the voters weren't yet aware of it. Each of our ads focused on our simple theme: who better represents you? This allowed us to gain rapidly in the polls as the election night neared. The night-long celebration of Jim Colby's upset victory brought a huge message home to me. The simpler you keep it, the stronger it gets. Colby won a close victory that night, but he served 11 terms and is now an Obama appointee. He has never complicated his message, and he has kept his politics strong and simple, even when it looked unpopular to do so. It's hard to stay motivated when you're confused. When you simplify your life, it gathers focus. The more you can focus on your life, the more motivated it gets. Chapter 7. Look for the lost gold. When I am happy, I see the happiness in others. When I am compassionate, I see the compassion in other people. When I am full of energy and hope, I see opportunities all around me. But when I am angry, I see other people as unnecessarily testy. When I am depressed, I notice that people's eyes look sad. When I am weary, I see the world as boring and unattractive. Who I am is what I see. If I drive into Phoenix and complain, what a crowded, smog-ridden mess this place is. I am really expressing what a crowded, smog-ridden mess I am at that moment. If I had been feeling motivated that day and full of hope and happiness, I could just as easily have said, while driving into Phoenix, "Wow, what a thriving, energetic metropolis this is." Again, I would have been describing my inner landscape, not Phoenix's. Our self-motivation suffers most from how we choose to see the circumstances in our lives. That's because we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. In every circumstance, we can look for the gold or look for the filth. And what we look for, we find. The best starting point for self-motivation is in what we choose to look for, in what we see around us. Do we see the opportunity everywhere? "When I open my eyes in the morning," said Colin Wilson, "I am not confronted by the world, but by a million possible worlds." It is always our choice. Which world do we want to see today? Opportunity is life's gold. It's all you need to be happy. It's the fertile field in which you grow as a person. And opportunities are like those subatomic quantum particles that come into existence only when they are seen by an observer. Your opportunities will multiply when you choose to see them. Chapter 8. Push all your own buttons. Have you ever peeked into a cockpit of a large airliner as you boarded a plane? It's an impressive display of buttons, levers, dials, and switches under one big windshield. What if, as you were boarding, you overheard the pilot say to the co-pilot, "Joe, remind me, what does this set of buttons do?" If I heard that, it would make it a rough flight for me. But most of us pilot our own lives that way, without much knowledge of the instruments. We don't take the time to learn where our own buttons are and what they can do. From now on, make it a personal commitment to notice everything that pushes your buttons. Make a note of everything that inspires you. That's your control panel. Those buttons operate your whole system of personal motivation. Motivational doesn't have to be accidental. For example, you don't have to wait for hours until a certain song that picks up your spirit comes on the radio. You can control what songs you hear. If there are certain songs that always lift you up, make a mix of those songs and have it ready to play in your car. Go through all of your music and create a greatest motivational hits playlist for yourself. Use the movies too. How many times do you leave a movie feeling inspired and ready to take on the world? Whenever that happens, put the name of that movie in a special notebook that you might label the right buttons. 6 months to a year later, you can watch the movie and get the same inspired feeling. Most movies that inspire us are even better the second time around. You have much more control over your environment than you realize. You can begin programming yourself consciously to be more and more focused and motivated. Get to know your control panel and learn how to push your own buttons. The more you know about how you operate, the easier it will be to motivate yourself. Chapter 9. Build a track record. It's not what we do that makes us tired. It's what we don't do. The tasks we don't complete cause the most fatigue. I was giving a motivational seminar to a utility company, and during one of the breaks, a man who looked to be in his 60s came up to me. "My problem," he said, "is that I never seem to finish anything. I'm always starting things, this project and that, but I never finish. I'm always off to something else before anything is completed." He then asked whether I could give him some affirmations that might alter his belief system. He correctly saw the problem as being one of belief. Because he did not believe he was a good finisher, he did not finish anything. So, he wanted a magical word or phrase to repeat to himself that would brainwash him into being different. Do you think affirmations are what you need? I asked him. If you had to learn how to use a computer, could you do it by sitting on your bed and repeating the affirmation? I know how to use a computer. I am great at using computers. I am a wizard on a computer. He admitted that affirmations would probably have no effect on his ability to use a computer. The best way to change your belief system is to change the truth about you. I said, we believe the truth faster than we believe false affirmations. To believe that you are a good finisher, you must begin by building a track record of finished tasks. He followed my suggestions with great enthusiasm. He bought a notebook, and at the top of the first page, he wrote, "Things I've finished." Each day he made a point of setting small goals and finishing them. Whereas, in the past, he would be sweeping his front walk and leave it unfinished when the phone rang. Now, he'd let the phone ring so that he could finish the job and record it in his notebook. The more things he wrote down, the more confident he became that he was truly becoming a finisher. And he had a notebook to prove it. Consider how much more permanent his new belief was than if he had tried to do it with affirmations. He could have whispered to himself all night long, "I am a great finisher," but the right side of his brain would have known better. It would have said to him, "No, you're not." Stop worrying about what you think of yourself and start building a track record that proves that you can motivate yourself to do whatever you want to do. Chapter 10. Welcome the unexpected. Most people do not see themselves as being creative, but we all are. Most people say, "My sister's creative, she paints," or "My father's creative, he sings and writes music." We miss the point that we are all creative. One of the reasons we don't see ourselves that way is that we normally associate being creative with being original. But in reality, creativity has nothing to do with originality. It has everything to do with being unexpected. You don't have to be original to be creative. In fact, it sometimes helps to realize that no one is original. Even Mozart said that he never wrote an original melody in his life. His melodies were all combination of old folk melodies. If you believe you were created in the image of your Creator, then you must, therefore, be creative. Then, if you're willing to see yourself as creative, you can begin to cultivate it in everything you do. You can start coming up with all kinds of unexpected solutions to the challenges that life throws at you.